Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey. Real people, real issues, and real estate. You're joining us for a special segment right now. We've got co-hosts Josh and Peter in the studio with us, and a very special guest, Paul Brouillete. Paul is a second-generation real estate professional, beginning his real estate career with his dad. He works as a broker associate with Lair Realty Partners. He's an educational coordinator for the Business Network International, and is a former coach with the Mike Ferry organization. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much. It's awesome to be here.
So we asked you on to talk a little bit about real estate and what's going on in the marketplace. One of the questions we hear more and more, we hear about millennials getting into the market for real estate. What's the best time for young people today to get into real estate?
Well, I guess depending upon who you ask, you'll get a different opinion. My thought is that if someone is at the age of 18, they're out in college, it's not too early for someone to think about what it's going to cost them in the course of a lifetime to live away from their parents. Today's life expectancy is people are expected to live to 88 years old, and someone who's 18 has 70 years ahead of them. You look at 70 years times 12 months, you're looking at 840 months, and at $1,000 a month, that's an $840,000 lifelong commitment if rents never went up.
Wow.
And I sometimes think back to a little epithet that occurred to me early in my real estate sales career. I was at the Howard Johnson's having lunch with Sam and his wife, and Sam used to hang out in the pool hall with me when I was a kid. And I said, "Hey, Sam, how you been? Great to see you." I said, "What are you folks doing here?" He said, "Oh, well," he says, "we're looking for a place to live." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "My wife and I have to move out of our rental because the landlord's selling the home." I said, "How long have you been renting?" He said, 46 years.
Wow.
I said, "You're kidding me." I said, "Did you ever think of buying?" He said, "Well, we thought about buying at the very beginning because he offered to sell it to us, but we just never came up with the down payment." So I thought about that story, and 46 years of renting, he made his landlord payments for 46 years but never took care of himself. So I believe that the American dream of home ownership is one of the most integral benefits of being an American, and that people should take care of that responsibility at an early age and realize that they have two options. One is to make their landlord wealthy, and the preferable option, I believe, is that people should early in the game take advantage of a home ownership opportunity and at least buy someplace that they can live in at an early enough age so that they can take advantage of all the tax benefits, appreciation benefits, and lifestyle benefits of home ownership.
Wow, I never really thought about it. 840 months worth of payments.
I've never had it explained to me in that manner, and boy, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's not that bad of a deal to take out a 30-year mortgage if you look at being somewhere for 70 years.
Absolutely. When you think about today's down payments, Josh, what does someone need to buy a home for minimum down payment today, percentage-wise?
Well, some of that depends on where they're actually trying to buy. There are great programs out there that would allow for a zero down payment through rural housing, assuming that the individual meets their income requirements per the county, as well as that the property is located in a geographical area that is eligible. And you'd be surprised at some of the towns and local municipalities that do qualify for that no money down program. Another great option, if you're looking for a low down payment, is if you're a veteran, you can do 100% financing through the VA, which in my experience is really one of the better programs that's offered out there. The key is the person has to be an eligible veteran to qualify for that program. And then finally, some of the other more common programs that you'll see would be, for example, FHA only requires 3.5% down, and we do offer some conventional loan programs through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that will allow the individual to put down as little as 3% for their down payment as well. So there are a lot of options, and it really is important to educate these consumers, especially first-time home buyers, on what all those options are, so that they can make a sound financial decision long term.
That's a really good point, Josh. And I forgot about all the programs out there that will still allow you to do no money down. So poor Sam that spent 46 years paying rent today, that doesn't have to be a choice anymore.
It really doesn't. And when you think about the advantage, even at 3.5% down with an FHA mortgage, a buyer purchasing their first home at $150,000 needs approximately $5,000 to initiate ownership.
Right.
And if the broker is able to initiate a seller contribution towards closing costs, with $5,000, someone can transfer from being a renter into being an owner for life. It's a pretty nice advantage available in this country.
It is.
For people that are living in Canada, I believe that you need to have somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 40% down in order to be approved for a loan. And through my Mike Ferry coaching experience, I've been involved with many agents up there. It's a completely different culture. We need to be aware of the fact that the United States is a great place to live, and home ownership is accessible to most all people if they want it.
Absolutely. Well, can you imagine if we had to come up with 40% down on every purchase?
Yeah.
Be a lot less deals out there, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, our offices would be a lot smaller, that's for sure.
Yeah, they would. They would. Paul, why don't we talk about multifamily investment business and how it's changed over the last 30 years and where you think it's headed from here?
You know, the multifamily investment business has gone through numerous curves and ups and downs over the past 30, 40 years. Back in the 1960s and 70s, a buyer of multifamily property could go to 7 or 8 different lenders, and they could buy a 2-family with the first lender. Then they could move out of that home, buy a 3 or 4 family with a second lender, and subsequently eventually own 8 or 10 properties. Today, in the world we live in with the internet, within an hour, a talented professional can learn more information about you and I than our own spouse might know about us.
That's true.
So the entire dynamic of information availability today has changed the dynamic of how people can, if you will, take advantage of the mortgage industry. And furthermore, the regulations have become, rightfully so, far more stringent and stricter in terms of what would be allowed to a homeowner. And many times when I do work with first-time buyers, I'll encourage them to start off with a 2, 3, or a 4-family property so that they have a potential long-term investment that would enable them to have a retirement program, and then to buy their single-family home in the second round. Josh, you may be able to verify for us that if a young couple out of college buys a single-family home up front, they no longer are entitled to buy that multifamily property with 3.5% down. They have to buy it typically with 10 or 20% down after they've made the initial investment in a single. Is that correct, Josh?
You're correct. You know, the person is essentially starting with a single-family residence, which, you know, makes sense for that to be their primary home. So when they start approaching a lender about trying to purchase a multifamily unit, it has that sense of they're doing it for investment purposes, and therefore the lender is going to require a larger down payment. For example, if someone was trying to buy a 2-family as an investment property, they'd have to come up with at least 20% down per conventional lending guidelines. And depending on the amount of units in the home that they're buying, they potentially could even have to come up with 25% down if they were buying a 3 or a 4 unit. So yeah, I mean, it's important to know what your requirements are if you're considering investing in multifamily rentals.
Right. Now,
you know, and something else that I would pose out to some investors is the demand for single-family investment properties these days. There are a lot of people who still have various credit challenges and other obstacles to buying their first home, so there's a tremendous demand for people who need to rent in a single-family residence. And some of the private mortgage insurance companies will actually allow an investor to purchase a single-family residence for only 15% down, even as an investment home. So that's not something that's very well known in the marketplace.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So are you finding that people are still able to buy 2, 3, 4 unit properties, or is the competition amongst developers who are turning them into condos gotten to the point where it's just tough to buy them?
It's a very viable market for first-time buyers to purchase a 2, 3, or 4, especially in our cities. I happen to be familiar with Lowell. That's where I grew up. My dad started an investment company there. We started out in the 1960s with investments, and I learned side by side from him how to buy and improve properties. When he passed away several years ago, he left my mother with about 750 units. Wow. And that acquisition and his knowledge base in terms of learning how to do the multiple tasks of bringing property up to a lifestyle where people can enjoy it enabled him to pretty much set his family up for life. I was the firstborn of 9 children, and the education that I had in learning about multifamily property encourages me to want to share that benefit with young people starting out. I have my mom is now in her 80s, and she's very happily retired. I have several younger siblings who, through investment real estate, are retired in their 50s. And so it's a viable means of people getting ahead financially. And that's why I bring up the concept of initiating a purchase with a multifamily home and then going to the single-family home, because logistically it requires a lot less money, and it's a great way to get that education early in a person's lifetime to be able to take advantage of all of the ownership benefits in real estate.
That, and then the income from the multifamily can actually help you qualify for the next house you buy.
Not to mention, if you have 2 of them, it can virtually pay your mortgage on the single.
That's absolutely right. Oh, that's very smart. And if you look at the amount of money you'd save over 30 years if your rental income is covering your single, it's huge.
Right. As investors oftentimes remind us, once you make that investment in a multifamily property, and if you plan to keep it long term, provided you take good care of your tenants and your property, that is going to be an income stream that you'll have for the rest of your life.
That's an excellent
$1,000 a month, rental or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's just one way to look at financial growth.
That's very good advice, Paul. Now, one of the things we see popping up all over the place these days is 55 plus condominiums. What is it that draws people to these exclusive developments?
Well, in today's world, it's not unusual for people on average to be working very, very hard to raise their families, to pay for college educations, to just keep up in today's world. It's not unusual for people to work 2 jobs. And as people grow into their 60s and 70s and they consider retirement options, oftentimes people want to simplify their lifestyle. And that oftentimes will include the option of having maybe 2 homes to live in. Many times we find people that are snowbirds, they have a home in Florida, or they may have a second home by the shore somewhere along the seacoast, and they no longer want to take care of snow removal and yard work, etc. And oftentimes they don't need a 4 or 5 bedroom home which they raise their family in. So people will tend to migrate to these 55 or over developments because, for one thing, they have a homogeneous environment in which the people living there are not going to, they're similar lifestyles, so there's not going to be a lot of noise. They don't have to take care of the exteriors. And one of the most popular products that I see out there are freestanding single-family 55 or older developments, because it gives people the benefit of home ownership without the responsibility of taking care of the exteriors, and they can turn the key and they can head away for 3 to 6 months and not have to worry about the home. So it's a very popular concept for people, and it enables people to be liberated and free from the burdens of home ownership, if you will.
That's a good way to look at it. I never thought about it that way. So why don't we talk about renting versus owning? Who are the people that should be renting instead of owning?
Great question. There are people who are in transition, either work-wise or school-wise, who, if they were to take home ownership, it may not be most advantageous for them timing-wise. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone graduates from a 4-year educational institute and they migrate directly into a job in their related field, most people in that category are able to instantly qualify for financing. Is that correct?
Correct. I've had instances where an individual, receives their diploma or their degree, showing, what they went to school for, and then, basically they get a job offer with a contract in that related field, And as soon as they start on that job, we're in a position where we're able to use their proposed salary in order to qualify them to purchase their first property.
Excellent. So I would say one exception to the rule of going right into ownership would be a young person who, for example, they've landed a job. They know that they're still in the job market and they're looking for a more permanent base in their job situation, or it's a young couple and one of the two members is just sort of unstable in terms of where they're
Right.
going to be working.
Right.
Sometimes it's beneficial for that party to rent for 6 months to a year until they solidify their working plans. Once they get that employment, those employment decisions established, then it would be preferable for them to establish the location where they want to start their family. I mean, of course, you have people that are transitioning from other parts of the country who sometimes they may have a trailing spouse, or they may have a house that needs to be sold somewhere else in order to enable them to have a higher qualification scenario. And so I think that's where it helps to have a very sensitive loan originator and real estate professional who can help the prospective client make decisions as to whether or not it'll be to their benefit to delay that ownership decision.
That's a good point, Paul.
Thanks.
Now, if you're just starting out, and there's a lot of people out there that don't even know where to begin the process, what's your advice?
I think one of the things that people should do when they're just starting out is they should find a reputable team. And that reputable team would consist of someone who's a real estate professional who has experience, has a trustworthy and reputation for integrity in the community. Speak to that person and seek advice. I think likewise it's important for an individual to speak with a loan originator who can advise them appropriately. It doesn't help to get a little bit of advice from a lawyer who has real estate experience. And I think if someone takes that approach and then they get a little bit of insight from their own family, it really sets the stage for making some positive decisions.
That's great advice, Paul. And for anybody that's listening that's thinking about buying or selling anywhere in the Merrimack Valley, the North Shore, or southern New Hampshire, you can contact Paul directly at 978-852-3001. Again, it's 978-852-3001, or check out his website at homesrs.com. Paul, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Very nice to be with you, Bob. Really appreciate it. Josh, Pete, it's just been a pleasure as always.
Paul, always a pleasure to
Great.
see you back.
We got to
My
take
friend.
a break for some quick commercials. We'll be back with more after this.